AI killed SEO in 2015.
Talk me through that.
So all the things that we think of AI doing today, right? Large language models, generative AI, those were all pioneered in the early 2010s. And they are essentially the same fundamental systems, right? Machine learning, language models that started powering Google post 2010, 2011. And AI was already making its way into Google in 2012 when I can't remember his name, but the previous like VP who was running Google search was sort of pushed out, like forced to resign, which turned out we thought it was for technical reasons around him resisting sort of the adoption of AI inside of Google systems. It turned out it was actually for sexual harassment, which is much worse. But the reality was by 2015, 2016, Google was using almost all of the technologies, granted not at the same scale, but they were using them behind the scenes to basically use user data, what people clicked on, what people clicked the back button on, how people engaged, to power what they showed and what they didn't show. And that is when the SEO game was changed. It killed is the wrong word. Like
Okay.
SEO is not going anywhere. I'm not in that world anymore, but I have extremely high confidence that in 10 years there will still be a vibrant SEO industry. It's just going to have to keep up with the changes of the times, just like any other field.
I think that's a really good segue then into SparkToro. So can you, for anyone who hasn't come across SparkToro before, can you kind of outline what SparkToro is, what it does, and who it's for?
Yeah. So I think we'll probably get into like the mechanics of the SaaS itself and why we chose to fund it and build it the way we did, and why it's a very strange animal in the SaaS world. But the core sort of value proposition of SparkToro is that it does audience research, and it does it with real accurate data as opposed to just sort of predictive words that come after other words like an LLM would. So you can say to SparkToro something like, I want to learn more about interior designers in Los Angeles, or I'm selling to CMOs in Canada, or my target is financial analysts on the East Coast of the United States. And you can describe your audience to SparkToro, or you can put in like, hey, they search for this keyword or they visit this website, and we will tell you all sorts of things about that audience demographically. So things like geography and gender and age and job positions and industries and all that kind of stuff, words that appear in their bio frequently. And we will also tell you about their behaviors on the web, what social networks they visit more and less than average, what search and AI tools they use more and less than average, which websites and podcasts and YouTube channels and subreddits they're subscribing to and following, which social accounts they follow. All that type of data that helps you do the critical work of choosing marketing channels, picking a strategy, and then investing in specific tactics. So SparkToro also tells you things like keywords they search for and topics of interest, and will give you content ideas to reach that audience. So you can kind of go from, hey, I want to reach interior designers in Los Angeles, to here's our content plan. These are the topics that we're going to hit. Here's where we're going to promote it. And here's our sort of budget and how we're going to distribute that. We're trying to take people all the way through the planning and channel and tactic list, so that those things can be informed by data, not just opinions.
I know one of the things that comes up a lot every time I've done consulting or fractional CMO work before is that the cost of ads is getting higher and higher and higher, and it has been since they started. And you get to a point now where the only people making money out of ads are Google and Facebook or Meta. And so as a marketer, the conversation is always like, we need to find some other channels. We need to find some places that aren't as crowded, aren't as expensive. And the pushback is always, well, where are those spaces? How do we find them? How much is it going to cost? And how do I track it? Yeah. So that's the kicker with a lot of this stuff, isn't it? It's just the attribution part of it. And especially with all that kind of stuff. Is there any way of tracking it, maybe without relying on cookies or without relying on a technology way of tracking things? Can you talk me through that a little bit if you've got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you've perfectly hit, Ryan, on exactly why Google and Facebook are so successful with their ad platforms. which is it's not just that they have incredible reach, right? And they really do have great targeting. I don't want to distract from that at all. In fact, a lot of the sort of technology and things that they're able to do are things that we're trying to do at SparkToro as well, so that we can present that same information. But they're amazing at it. What they are great at, their secret weapon, is attribution. Facebook can say, hey, we know that this person visited this page which had this ad on it, and then later they bought from you. Now, what Facebook does not say is, what if that ad hadn't been there? Would they still have bought from you? And I would argue that in many cases, the answer is yes. Certainly like 35% of Google's revenue is coming from people who search for your brand name, and then you have to buy the ad so that one of your competitors doesn't appear above you. And then, people click on that ad and you're like, wow, Google PPC is so effective for us. No, man, you built a great brand and people want it and they're coming and searching for it. That's what worked. It's just that Google gets the credit because they take credit for sales that would have happened anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To your core question about how do you measure it if you don't have the data that Google and Facebook do, right? If you don't have the ability to see, here's all the pages that they visited, how do we know that they listened to this podcast and that's what caused them to come by? The answer is you don't. You have to do it the same way Don Draper did it in the 20th century. I'm serious. You have to go back in time to 20th century style measurement. So, an ad agency in the 1950s gets approached by Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola says, hey, we want to launch a new campaign for Diet Coke. That's probably in the 60s, actually. But we want to launch a new campaign for Diet Coke. And so the ad agency says, great, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run these TV spots in these geographies on these shows, which we think are your core demographic. We're going to use this messaging, which we think is going to resonate. And we're going to test and we're going to see. So we ran these spots very heavily in Chicago and Detroit. We didn't run any in Minneapolis and Cleveland. Those cities are roughly, statistically similar. What was the same store sales lift over the next 6 months? Oh, look, it was 7%. 7%. That's what we can expect from a TV ad campaign with this messaging. Let's try 2 more messages. We're going to try these different ones on the West Coast. We're going to test those. We're going to see which one works. Do we think we should bifurcate and do different things for the coasts versus the Midwest? And do we think we should run 10 different messages at once or focus on one thing? And that's how they did it. They did time series and geographic based testing and iteration, and then they discovered what the lift was. And could you ever prove that because someone watched that one TV ad or drove by that billboard for Diet Coke, that's why the next time they went to the convenience store, they bought a 6-pack of Diet Coke? No, there's no attribution. There's just measurement and testing. And that is what I would argue we have to do in a world where the big tech platforms are taking away referral string data. They are hiding, how someone came to you. They will not tell you which things of yours someone consumed before they reached your website. And they're sending fewer and fewer clicks anyway. So I think in 10 years, we're going to be in a world where 95, 99% of all digital marketing is organic digital marketing anyway, is happening in the streams, right? In the feeds of platforms, on YouTube, on Reddit, on LinkedIn, or whatever the equivalents are 10 years from now. And then people see the thing that they want, and later they go to Google or they go to a store and they buy that thing or they search for that thing. And you'll never be able to connect up the what drove the visit. You'll only be able to test and measure.
I want to revisit some of this marketing stuff in a little moment because I had Lars Lofgren. I don't know if you know Lars.
I'm familiar with the name, but I don't think we don't know each other personally or anything.
Yeah, he's a beast. He was he built a $7 million per year affiliate business, and it all came crumbling down. So he was a little bit bitter and twisted about it. But we were talking about Reddit and some of the SEO tactics or some of the marketing tactics that you can do with Reddit in particular. One of the things that he brought up is that Reddit's skyrocketed in terms of their share of the internet's traffic over the last year or so. And one of the theories that he has is that a lot of people are bombarded with low quality AI written crap. Or you get the AI overview in Google, but it's wrong or it doesn't really answer your question. So people are deliberately seeking out human generated content on, so it's like plus Reddit on the end of the search queries. So I want to revisit that in just a moment. But if you don't mind, let's go back a little bit. I want to talk about Moz, your days there, and the business model and how it adapted over time. So, because that started off as a consulting business, right, or an agency, and then it became a software business. Then you raised a little bit of money and grew it, and we'll talk about raising money in a moment as well. But just talk me through a little bit about your decision from switching from a consulting model to a software model. Like, what made you decide to do that, and how did you manage that transition?
It was a little accidental, to be honest. Like, Ryan, I don't want to suggest that I was some sort of genius and saw the rise of SaaS coming and was intentional about it. No, nothing like that. The accident was that we built some software that we used internally at our own agency. Agency is a fancy word for a company that had like 5 people at the time. I think it was more of a consultancy. And, we were helping folks with SEO, but to do a lot of the things we needed to do, crawl Google, collect PageRank from the Google toolbar, if anybody remembers that, like all these silly little things, crawl websites, we needed tools. And so Matt, our developer, built a bunch of these things, and I couldn't resist. Like this, I've always been this way, Ryan. I like to be really transparent. I don't like to have like behind the scenes secret stuff. I want to like show everyone and everything. And I was like, Matt, I really want to like give this to our blog readers. Like we built a successful blog that, attracted a lot of people in the SEO world at the time. It was very early in SEO. There weren't a lot of places to go. And Matt was like, dude, no way. Our bandwidth couldn't handle it. This is pre AWS, right? So like there's no cloud where you can host stuff. It's expensive. And I was like, fine. How about we make people PayPal us like $29 a month? And if you PayPal us the $29, then we'll give them access. And he's like, fine. So over the Christmas break, like 2006 to 2007, Matt codes it up. We launch it in, I think, like February of 07. And by June of 07, we are making as much money from these PayPal subscriptions to our software as we were in the consulting business. And my mom and I, right, who started the agency, my mom, Billion, we were like, oh shit, this subscription revenue thing is great. Let's do more of that. And then we raised money in November of that year because some venture capitalists reached out to us. When they did, by the way, guess what I did, Ryan?
What'd you do, Ryan?
I had to Google venture capital. It's like, what is this? Oh, man.
The seasoned entrepreneur knows exactly what he's doing from the very beginning. Definitely not winging it as you go.
Oh my God. I was so naive. Like I come from, a background where there's just none of that sort of institutional knowledge. We had no network. Like we didn't know anybody in Silicon Valley or tech or anything like that. Everything was just a lot harder for us. We had to do it all for the first time. And yeah, I mean, I think Moz was wonderful in a lot of ways. The SEO world was wonderful to me in a lot of ways. And also the world of venture capital is right for a very, very tiny slice of people. And not for me.
I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot. Like when I first got into this world, you read about the success stories in TechCrunch, and that's what everyone wants to do. But it's, what is it, like VCs pick 1 in 1,000 companies gets funded, and then most of them crash and burn, or they're just kind of the walking dead that stumble along and never really go anywhere. So massive selection bias there. But I always found the stories of companies that are not based in the Bay Area, companies that are bootstrapped, companies that actually grew by making something useful and charging people for it. Shock. What an amazing original novel idea. But those businesses are always way more interesting to me. One of the things that I've seen, so I run a community for software founders that are a little bit more established. They're past that idea stage, and they're based outside of the Bay Area. One of the patterns that we've seen pretty often is that they will start off with a service business like an agency, but eventually they want to transition. Again, the get off that roller coaster. If we get a client, we do the client work. Now we've got to run around and find another client, get off that roller coaster and get that regular recurring revenue coming in. Yeah. But a lot of them struggle to make that transition. So you had literally one developer, a couple of months over Christmas break, and just managed to nail product market fit straight away. Is that the overnight success story that was actually a couple of years in building because you had an audience and all that, or was it something else?
Yeah. So this is the key here. I don't think is the tools. Like if you were to look at what those tools were, even for 2007, like they were not amazing. I don't think they were best in class. There was a few like downloadable pieces of SEO software you could use that were all right. The things that we did right were we built an audience who was desperate for the thing that we built. And so even though it was not great, it didn't really matter because it was the only thing available, right? Like the nascent SEO industry was first off reviled by the broader tech industry, absolutely hated, despised. Any hacker news thread that you read from like before even 2020 is just it treats people in the SEO world like the most despicable scum of the universe, and I think because of that, there was nothing in the field that people could use. And so, when you're crawling around the desert for looking for water, like the little muddy pool of SEO tools that was SEO Moz in 2007 is a godsend. And the second thing that we did that was unintentionally extremely smart was that we had spent 5 years before that building an audience of people who wanted that product. They knew us, they liked us, they trusted us, and perhaps most importantly, they subscribed to us. Every time we published a blog, we were in their inbox. There was no feeds at the time. It's hard to imagine, it's hard to remember what 2007 meant to have like someone subscribing to your blog. There was no, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn didn't have a feed yet. Reddit was barely around. Dig was like the place that a lot of techie people went to. It was incredible. Our open and click through rates were just remarkable. When we published something, everyone in the industry knew about it, like within 48 hours. If it was good, it would be emailed to 10,000 people who weren't on our list yet. So those two things I think were the secret. And a lot of SaaS founders, when I talk to them, Ryan, they have a great plan for a product. They have a good idea. They've got a strong market they're going after. And they have no answer to the question, how are you going to reach the people who will care about this?
What are your thoughts on the idea of a minimum viable product? Because I know, like, that's the thing. If there's no tooling in the space, having some tooling, like we were talking about politics before, like the bar is fairly low. So what is minimum then is a hell of a lot different to what would be considered minimal now, right? What do you think about that?
I would say the minimum viable product depends entirely on your market sector. And in tech overall right now, and lots of other arenas of the world, there's no such thing. Like you need an absolutely exceptional product in order to be minimally viable in a space. And that's just because expectations are sky high. The cost of building something, the ability to build things, AI has obviously made it considerably easier to build sort of shitty prototypes. And that, I don't know, that's not a bad thing necessarily. I think it's fine for the bar to be raised around that kind of stuff. I feel very lucky that we hit an industry at a time with a product where the bar was so incredibly low. And I don't believe in the classic MVP as Eric Ries originally defined it in his Lean Startup book, which I think was perfect for its time, but doesn't hold up today, at least in the sectors that he was talking about. And that's why I wrote a post, which you probably read, and that nudged the question, about EVPs, sort of exceptionally viable products, and what those entail. How do you design and build an exceptional viable product for an audience that is picky and has choices?
I want to unpack that point you mentioned before about figuring out how to get your product in front of people that are actually going to care about it. So an idea I've been toying with a little bit lately is so much thought space in the SaaS world in particular is about product market fit. That's only two dimensions. there's also channel, how do you get in front of them? But then there's the founder as well. And I'd argue that kind of founder channel fit is something that nobody seems to talk about a lot. So it's not only the right channel to get the product to market, but it's got to be a channel that you, the founder, because you're a team of 5 or you're a team of 3 or you're a team of 1, you've got to be able to do it day in, day out consistently to be able to build it up, right? I wanted to, is that something that you would agree with? Like, what do you think about that?
I do agree with it largely. The only nuance I would say there is I have seen plenty of successful founders who are not the core marketer, and instead they, sometimes have a co-founder, or they bring in a marketing person or team, even an agency or consultant who helps them find that channel fit with their product and their market. And if you're incredibly strong at product, especially if you're doing something innovative that is in high demand in a space where the competition is relatively low, you don't need to be absolutely perfect or even great at founder channel fit. I like that framing, by the way. If it's okay with you, I'm going to steal that because I've heard a lot of people use the founder market fit, which I think is not as descriptive as the one you're talking about, right? It's a different vector entirely about is the founder actually able to reach this group of people through the work that they've done or the strengths that they've got. And yeah, that can be powerful. It's not absolutely necessary if you nail the product market thing.
One thing you're really well known for is having a really strong personal brand, and that's something that I'm sure it took a lot of time to build up, and you invested in it, and the importance of building that community of people who know you and like you and trust you ahead of time. Like you said with Moz, you didn't just launch, code up something in a couple of months and launch it. That was part of it, but you had an audience to launch it to. You had people who already knew you before you launched it. So I wanted to go back in time a little bit. One of the things that you're really well known for is Whiteboard Fridays. And I'm showing my age a little bit too, because this was quite a while back. So this was how I first found you. And I'm sure you get that all the time. But for anyone who maybe has never heard of Whiteboard Fridays, do some Googling around. It's amazing. Go and check out the earlier episodes, because it's great when Rand's not quite as polished as you are now. But this was, I was going to ask you about that actually. But so Whiteboard Fridays is quite literally Rand, your pretty face in front of a whiteboard, talking through a marketing topic of the week, and you do it really articulately. You're able to nail a bunch of things. It's interesting, it's engaging, and you learn something. And all these videos are about 10 minutes, 15 minutes long. What was the longest one? Maybe 20 was probably
maybe 20.
The longest. Yeah. So talk me through that from your perspective, because I think that was one of the most successful B2B content marketing strategies of all time. So when you started doing Whiteboard Fridays, you already had a following, you already had a successful blog. What made you decide to do videos? What made you decide to do Whiteboard Fridays specifically?
I was very tired at the end of the week of 4 days of blogging. Like it was really hard for me to write. Yeah, I was writing like long form, SEO content and stuff, and trying to help people like Sunday through Wednesday night. And I was like, oh man, the end of the week comes and Thursday I'm just like, oh, I'm so pooped. Hey, can we just like film something? Because that'll only take like 15 minutes or whatever, however long it is. And then we just put that up. That is the innovation. The innovation came from laziness and just being tired. And yeah, I think it did not initially resonate for the first, I want to say it was about 3 or 4 years that we were producing Whiteboard Fridays every week. They underperformed every other blog post on Moz's website significantly. And the only reason we stuck with them is because I was tired. Like I didn't want to have to do the work. And so, we used Whiteboard Friday as a like cheat for Rand to get a blog post up on Friday that didn't require him to sort of specifically blog. So they underperformed all the other posts on the site until about 4 years in. And then they started performing at that same level on average. And then they, over time, overtook it. And I think the lesson that I take away from that today is not, me in front of a whiteboard is so great. Like if you watch the old episodes, they're not, you say I'm polished and articulate. Compared to the average YouTuber with 100,000 plus subscribers, I am not polished. I am not engaging or entertaining in the same way that those types of folks are. Even on, what I call like boring business topics, there are folks who are far more engaging today. But it was early. It was so early, and there's nobody doing this in B2B. To your point around like it being a great channel opportunity, video was not that popular. People did not watch video on their phones. Like this was not the device that we saw people using to watch Whiteboard Fridays. It was all desktop, like 95% plus until probably even 2013. It was all desktop, which is insane to imagine today. Like, oh, hey, there's a video. I'm going to wait and watch it on my computer at home, or at the office. That's unfathomable. Like everybody's watching them on the subway right now, The other thing I think that is the big takeaway for me from the format is that it was a unique format. It was a memorable thing. It's one of the only times I've ever done good branding. Like Whiteboard Friday, it's memorable. It tells you what the thing is. It tells you when to watch it. You immediately are like, Whiteboard Friday, that sounds like a series. Tell me, like, what's it about and where is it? It just works, right? Like the branding of it works. And SEOs historically are terrible at branding. Absolutely terrible. It's like the part of their brain that, could focus on like catchy advertising slogans went right out the window once they looked at keyword research the first time. And I'm no different. I called my company SEO Moz, but it was all one word, and you couldn't like no one could say it. People would call us on the phone and be like, "Yeah, is this Shao Moss?" We're like, "Yep, that's us. Me, Rand, and Shao Moss." Like a million different things. So I've gotten better at that stuff, learned a lot more about branding, but Whiteboard Friday was just, it hit in a bunch of ways. Now I've been doing, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing these 5-minute whiteboards. What's interesting about them, Ryan, I think they could be equally or similarly successful, but one of the problems is that people don't consume video content in other people's blogs the way they used to. You go to YouTube, you go to TikTok, you go to Reddit, even LinkedIn. And I actually think 5 minutes is too long. The attention span is not there. When my most successful videos by far are now sub 3 minutes. And yeah, those are on, I put those mostly on LinkedIn, also Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky. And they perform even bigger in terms of number of people who watch them than the Whiteboard Fridays at Moz. It's just that the consistency and the branding aren't quite as sticky. And I think a lot of the people who see me still associate that with like Whiteboard Friday. They don't have a name. The new name hasn't like caught up.
How long did it take you to make an episode of Whiteboard Friday? And how long does it take you to make the 5-minute Friday videos now? Is there a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, or is it just, you and a camera? Like what's actually the workload required?
Yeah. Once Moz raised venture and like had some money, we had a videographer who took care of almost all of the behind the scenes stuff. And so for me, it was, I think my assistant, I used to have an assistant. My assistant would block 1 hour for me to basically write the content, put it up on the whiteboard, film the video, make the, there was like those hero shots, interesting hero shots. So that was pretty usual. If we had to film 3 or 4 in a row, which happened quite a bit because I had a lot of conference travel, I could get it down to 30 minutes per episode. So it was pretty darn fast. One thing you'll notice is that, like I said, it's not that polished because I didn't have a transcript. I am speaking as I'm speaking to you now off the cuff. There was not the planning of, hey, here's what I'm going to say, and here's a transcript, and I'm going to look at the camera and read off, something below that. I didn't do that. We didn't find that format as engaging. Nowadays, the 5-minute whiteboards that I put on SparkToro or the ones that you see on LinkedIn or Twitter or Reddit, wherever, those videos take me between 30 and 45 minutes to film. I no longer have an assistant. I no longer have a videographer. So it's very bare bones. SparkToro, we're all remote and home office. And so even if I guess we could afford a videographer, but it'd be awkward to I don't know. Hey, Geraldine, someone's coming over for, no, it's not gonna, we're not gonna do that.
Are they scripted now, or is it still you talking off the cuff?
I would say they're more scripted in that I know exactly what I'm gonna say in those 3 or 4 minutes, right? I've only one point that I really want to get across, maybe two. And so I know I have to deliver that. And I will say it takes me usually 2 or 3 takes now, whereas Whiteboard Friday, almost every episode was filmed in 1 take.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You're good, buddy. That's I've never been able to do
I had
anything in 1 take.
practice. I just had so much practice.
Was it practice from doing Whiteboard Fridays? Did you have a coach? Did you get someone to kind of help you with expressing verbally a little bit better? How did you talk me through that?
I did at one point, gosh, what year was that? Maybe 2010 or 11. I hired a sort of speech and stylistic coach who worked with me. Maybe we did 6 or 7 sessions together where they worked with me specifically on disfluencies. You will notice that I was always very conscientious of and self-conscious about uhs and ums and buts and restarting sentences. Apparently, it's considered very presidential now to not speak in sensible sentences. But at the time, I was very too. I'm still trying to work out of my disfluencies in my vocabulary. And that did help me, I think, a considerable amount. But practice, it was just the repetition, so many times. And I filmed more videos than just the Whiteboard Fridays. There were internal videos and there were videos I did for product stuff. But now I have, 20 years of experience talking to a camera in a room. So that helps a lot.
The muscle memory kicks in.
Yeah, it kicks in.
Final question on this. How did you come up with all the ideas for Whiteboard Fridays? If it's just you talking off the cuff all the time, did you at least have a big list of ideas? Hey, I should talk about this. I should talk about this. What did that look like for you?
I would say that most of the time, probably 80-90% of the time, I had emailed our videographer ahead of time and said, hey, this topic is feeling hot to me right now in the SEO world. Because I was on all the blogs and forums and Moz's own comments and people replying to my emails, and something would hit, right? Something would come up. I'd be at a conference, someone would say something, I'd go, we need to make a video about that. That's actually still how I do all the 5-minute whiteboards. I'll tell you today, after this, I'm planning to film one about the Met Gala. Yep. Because I found some really interesting stuff about the Met Gala, and it sort of ties in with channel and audience stuff. People are talking about the outfits that were worn. There's some wild things, and I wanted to specifically bring up how even though the fashion that you see at those events feels completely disconnected from what any human being would wear day to day, it is the outrageousness of it that makes it stand out. And it's part of how they grab attention and get people to pay attention to the brand, and then get people talking about that brand, which then means that when you walk into Nordstrom or Saks Fifth Avenue or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, Tom Brown. I have an association with who that is. I may not even remember why I know who that is or why that label resonates with me or whatever, but it doesn't matter, right? The Met Gala is this opportunity to do organic branding through product, right? Similar to how, TechCrunch Disrupt helped startups get in front of venture capitalists, or being on the top of Hacker News helps you get in front of the tech community, or being on top of Reddit in your particular subreddit helps you get in front of, gardeners, whatever it is. And that, I think that when people have that weird thing of why are they doing such crazy shit that would never work and no one would ever wear? That's why.
That's why. How important do you think it is for a SaaS company to have a face of the company. I know that's something you've been very successful at, but I know a lot of SaaS founders I talk to are very technical, a little bit shy, a little bit introverted, don't feel as comfortable getting in front of a camera or getting up on stage or anything like that. Is that important, or is that take it or leave it?
I think it is one kind of strength among many different options. It's really hard to be a SaaS founder or a founder of anything without some strengths. But we all also have weaknesses. We all also have things that I would say, rather than like you need to work on this thing and get better at it, I would try to encourage any founder to lean into what you're great at and build a company that doesn't need the things you're not good at. The alternative is finding a co-founder who sort of, backs up your weaknesses and complements your strengths. That can work too. Like, I'm not a super technical person. Casey, my co-founder at SparkToro, is super technical. I'm not a game designer. Nicholas Kraj, my co-founder at Snackbar Studio, has designed 100 games that have done billions of dollars in revenue. I'm not a fantastic fiction writer, but my wife, Geraldine, who's the lead writer for Snackbar, is a James Beard Award-winning, writer. So I think that those things can really work well. You don't have to have a face for your company. I do think in sort of the arena of MicroSaaS, it's helpful. And that's just because they're so in MicroSaaS, you are trying to not employ that many people, right? Like your team is usually, 2 to 10. And so having someone in a founder or co-founder or at least lead role that is human, that people can identify with the company, can be really helpful.
I've heard this come up a few times in the context of VC-backed competitors. So one of the questions that comes up a lot is, I don't really want to raise any money, but 2 or 3 competitors have just popped up. They've got money coming out the wazoo. And I feel like I need to go out and raise money now just to keep up with them. And one of the bits of advice that often comes up is, well, you can build a personal brand around it as well as as an alternative strategy to going out and raising lots of money. What are your thoughts on that? Are there any other ways that a bootstrap business can compete with funded SaaS, or does it kind of push you into that VC-backed? Do you get railroaded into that?
Here's what I consistently found in both my companies and almost all of the indie SaaS founders that I've talked to, which is, if you're experienced in the space, you have more fear around a non-funded competitor who's profitable or break even than you do around a funded competitor. Because 97% of venture investments will die in 4 years. So when you see one of your competitors getting funded, you're like, ha, 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 you're done. You are done. It's over for you. Like, go to their LinkedIn, leave them a congratulations, be like, go raise more money, bro. Because they have taken their odds, their 7-year survival odds. So the average small business in the United States has a 7-year survival rate of about 55%. It's actually higher for services businesses. So like agencies, consultancies, that kind of thing. And then what's the 7-year survival rate for a venture-backed tech company? It's under 5%.
Ouch. Wow.
So look, I don't know. I'm just saying, statistically speaking, if your competitors raise venture, you just won.
That's so counterintuitive too, because a lot of people panic at that moment. But you're so right about that.
I don't panic a bit. I think it's kind of it's a superpower to be self-funded, because you do not need to return insane, ludicrous amounts of money to people who will sort of otherwise control whether you live or die. And the vast majority of these companies just don't make it. And that's the venture model too, right? Like they don't have time to be on 100 boards of directors. They're going to invest in 100 companies knowing that hopefully 90 of those companies will die in the first 3 to 4 years after they fund them, so they can be on a reasonable number of boards and help sort of the few winners to, become the next billion-dollar company and return 10x, 50x the fund. That's the mathematics of venture. And so it's a failure-based model. The other thing I think that it's really powerful to do is to say, because if somebody else gets funded, they now need to serve a huge market, which means you have a massive advantage at serving one small slice of that market perfectly. Building your brand, building your marketing, building your product, building your team around serving just that group of people really, really well. The big risk that I think SaaS in particular has, and founders have, is seeing one of their competitors get funded and then say, how do we keep up with them? They're trying to reach this whole huge market. How do we also serve that huge market? Niche down, brother. Like go way, way down. That would be my advice.
Talk to me a little bit about freemium. So this is something that's a little bit controversial. I know I've heard some people say you should never, ever, ever try and bootstrap a freemium business, ever. You've got, so SparkToro is freemium, correct? And with Moz, you also had a whole bunch of free tools that you gave away, that were really useful. So that's been a big part of your, that plus the personal branding has been like a consistent theme across your career. Is that part of the Fishkin playbook? Is that just a thing that you found to be really effective, or do you do it for a different reason?
Yeah, we talked about, Casey and I have talked about a bunch, freemium versus free trial. We actually talked to a contact we share, Rob Walling, about what he's seen with a ton of the SaaS investments that he's made, and with Tiny Seed now, which I'm also an investor in. Geraldine and I are, and our sense is that freemium works really well in some markets and not well at all in other markets. And it's not you should never do it if you're bootstrapping. It's you should apply the right strategy to the right audience and market. And for us, freemium works really well because there's an expectation of using a product before you buy it, especially in a self-service SaaS world. If we were enterprise, get on the phone, do a demo, freemium probably doesn't make as much sense. But because we're who we are, and because Casey and I knew we would never want to build a big team of sales reps and account managers and all that kind of stuff, not because we didn't think it would be profitable, it probably would be. We just don't want to run that company.
So this comes down to looking in the mirror and being like, okay, this is who I am as an entrepreneur. This is the business that I want to build. These are the companies I want to serve.
One thing we knew, I told Casey when we started this, I was like, hey man, when we started Moz, it took 7 years to go from basically, hey, we're gonna do this thing, to having any degree of success. So we better be ready to be in this for 7 years before we start seeing it pay dividends. And we were very lucky. Like we really saw it pay dividends after 4, which is great. But man, I just don't, I can't sign up to be unhappy every day at work for a decade. Like we're old now, like how many more of these do we get? Maybe I get, if I'm really lucky and I want to, and I'm passionate about it, maybe I get 2 or 3 more companies in my life. But I don't know, Ryan, like, I don't know how you feel, but it's just, you get to a certain point in your life and you're like, yeah, you cannot pay me to do that. The number doesn't matter. The number could be $100 million and I still wouldn't do it. When I left Moz, I won't say the name of the company, but there was a company, it was a social media company that reached out to me and said, hey, we would like you to come be like sort of our brand ambassador to the marketing community. And like, we can guarantee you basically $1 million salary a year and sort of bonus stock stuff that would come out to, maybe $4 million after 3 years. And Geraldine and I had a real conversation about it. And I was like, I'm not going to be happy. And she's like, well, then the money doesn't matter, right? The money just doesn't, that's not what That's not what this life is about. It's too short. It can't have you stressed out and frustrated and unhappy, even if the money's fantastic. I think obviously that's a really lucky place to be in life. We could have been in a situation where we would have been desperate for that, and I don't know. But yeah, and then a
But
few years later, Moz sold, which of course that like changed our finances a lot, and
yeah,
that made me even more grateful that I hadn't sort of sacrificed the things that I want to do for that. So yeah.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that too, because a lot of people just look at the numbers, they look at the dollars, and they don't think about the fact that every year that you spend or every day that you spend, you're never getting that one back. So there are always more ways you can make more money. Never a way you can go back in time and get time back. Rand, just a couple of last questions. I know I'm going to ask you one more question about freemium because a lot of people in my community ask me about this. So one of the recurring problems with freemium is that it's really difficult to get people off that forever free plan and get them to upgrade to a paid plan. Do you just build around that? You just expect that that's what's going to happen? I think MailChimp had 3% or 2% of people would ever upgrade. Or are there any specific tactics that you can use to give people a bit of a nudge to upgrading in terms of feature gating or gating their usage? Or is there anything that you can do to get people using a paid plan instead of just abusing the free plan forever?
I think depending on what you're building, the answer is definitely yes, but that answer is custom to every different company. So I don't think there's you just have to do this. But I would say we planned exactly as you mentioned. We expected that around 2 to 3% of the people who sign up for the free plan would even be qualified types of buyers who might buy and get value from the paid plan. And that was not a big deal for us. Like that was just what we expected. Similar story at Moz, and similar story at some of the other companies I've invested in and worked with over the years. I think the frustrating part is if you expect 100 people who sign up for the free version of the product to also be the right customers for the paid version, you're going to have a bad time, a really bad time. What I like thinking about more is how do I get the people who are free users, 10%, 20% of them, to be amplifiers, to be people who say nice things about our brand to other people who might be right customers for us. And that makes me want to be more generous to them, like in terms of what the plan offers, and also give like a real taste of the product and its value and let people get real value from the free version. I want them to abuse the free version because if they do, they're going to include our data in their reports. They're going to talk about us at conferences. They're going to tweet about us and post about us on LinkedIn and submit Reddit comments about us. And that is what you need. You need those amplifiers. And so I sort of just think in the complete opposite direction of not how do we convert them, but how do we get them to talk about us?
So it's feature, not a bug, is what you're saying.
Totally.
Yeah.
If it's a bug, don't build freemium, right?
I always thought there was a little bit of a trap. I know a lot of my more technical friends hear about product-led growth and they think, awesome, great, I don't have to do any marketing anymore. That's fantastic. I'll just build this amazing product. Which I think is a little...
That's not what that means.
Yeah. I haven't. I don't know if you know Wes Bush. I haven't had him on yet, but he's on my to hit up list. But I think that's a major danger. Is people? It gives more technical founders that feel a bit iffy about doing marketing an excuse to just focus on coding a little bit more instead of actually getting out and telling the world about what they've built.
This is actually the same in games world too. So I studied the indie games world a ton before I started Snackbar Studio. And I can tell you,
Tell
Ryan,
me about that.
there's people talk about how there's 10,000 games that launch on Steam every year and only 500 indie games make any real money. But if you look at those 10,000 games, there are people who make their game by themselves, say nothing about it ever online, launch it on Steam, and then go, oh, it didn't work. It's just, it really hurts my brain. I mean, look, if it's a side project and you're just doing it for fun to be able to say, like, I made a game once, fine, I get it. But if you were hoping that people would actually buy that game and you didn't put marketing and sort of customer distribution and acquisition into the product, yeah, you're up a creek, right, with no paddle. And if you haven't built a community of people who subscribe to an email list or who wish listed you on Steam, who've been following your game on social platforms for hopefully 6 months or a year before you ever came out, yeah, you're not going to have those people to talk about it. And I think SaaS world works the same way. The only difference in games versus SaaS world is games, you get one shot. Like it is the 8 Mile M&M problem. Like it's just you're on stage for like that 1 week when you launch, and if that week doesn't go well, the odds of you turning it around in games world are next to nothing. SaaS world is the opposite. You can have a crap launch, you can have a shitty first 4 years, and you can still turn it around. You can turn it around at any time because SaaS is so iterative, and what you make, if you find product market fit, you find your audience, you find marketing channels that work, you can do it. And I think that's one of the most appealing things about this business versus a lot of other consumer plays, including games. And I recognize like this is a high risk operation. Me starting Snackbar and putting a bunch of money into it, and we raised $2 million, which is like almost double what we raised for SparkToro. So there's lots of risk, but also I have quite high confidence. Like I think we've got some secret weapons in our arsenal for that.
Can you divulge what the marketing plan is for Snackbar, or are you keeping that one a little bit close to your chest for now?
Yeah, I can divulge one thing. So here's something that I was told by people who work at Steam, which is that Steam, which is the primary platform for games distribution, has some intricacies of how their algorithm works. It's essentially they start showing new games to people in their feeds, inside their store feeds, and there are 250 million people a day who are browsing their Steam store. I'm one of them, but like this is the thing. Like people talk about how games world is saturated, but there are 250 million people who are just waiting for new games to come out. They want them in their genre. They want them in the sectors that they like. They have to look good. They have to have the sort of signals. But Steam particularly rewards games that get lots of reviews at launch. As you can imagine, there's lots of ways to get reviews. I asked the people at Steam, I was like, hey, is it against your terms of service or rules or whatever to like email my list and be like, hey, if you like our game, can you please leave a review? And they're like, no, that's great. Go for it. I was like, what if I reach out one-to-one and I'm like, hey, Ryan had me on his podcast. Can I email Ryan and be like, hey, Ryan, our game came out. Like, if you've got $20 and an hour, would you play it and tell us what you think and like leave a review? And they were like, nope, that's fine. You can do that too. I was like, cool. Okay, great. Amazing. That's something I'm good at, right? Like that's building an email list of 5,000 people who I know and who I've interacted with over the last quarter century in my professional world and being like, hey, would you play this game? And getting a few hundred of them to leave a review, that doesn't feel impossible. And if you look at these games that come out, every day that don't perform, they're lucky to get 5 reviews. Like, honestly, you can't have like your mom and your girlfriend and like, your buddy down the street review your game. I'm worried. I'm worried.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like you think, one of the things I really respect is the fact that you didn't just stick to the same industry over and over and over again. You see entrepreneurs do that all the time, but you've reached out into a brand new space, brand new industry. It's consumer too. It's not even B2B. So I was going to ask you, just as a final question, as a bit of a thought experiment. If you were starting a brand new company today, but I suppose you are starting a brand new company today. If you are starting a brand new SaaS business today, and you didn't have an email list, didn't have a personal brand, didn't have an audience, had none of that stuff that you've been building up for, I guess, the last 15, 20 years, what would be the 3 marketing activities that you would focus on the most today in 2025?
I'm going to go back to that conversation we had where I talked about leaning into your strengths and away from things that you're weaker at. And I would say that I would identify my particular strength. So in this thought experiment, let's assume that I'm the me of today, but somehow don't have any of the network. In that case, I know that I'm good at video content. I know that I'm good at talking about sort of complex topics in a few different spaces and making them accessible to people. And so what I would do is look for spaces where I could start to iterate and create that content and find, probably starting on mostly YouTube and LinkedIn, but possibly also Reddit, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter. Twitter is kind of mostly AI bots at this point, maybe Instagram. And I would essentially see which of those things can resonate. YouTube is actually really good about this. You can post videos even with nothing else. But if you're consistent in your posting and YouTube sees that, much like the Steam algorithm, they'll put those videos in front of people on their sidebar, on their home feed. And if they see ones start to get some traction, they'll show it to a lot more people. So if I saw some of those videos getting a few hundred or a few thousand viewers, that would be my starting signal to go after that market. And then I'm starting from an audience first perspective. I'm not talking about the product. I would try and find the audience that I could resonate with first because it's me. And then I would try and figure out what are the big problems that no other product is solving well for this group of people that we could solve with our software.
I love that approach.
Yeah, it's very different from, I think, how most SaaS businesses are built, which are product idea first. But if you know that you're good at audience building, I'd kind of start there and then go that direction.
And then I suppose too, if the solution to that problem may not necessarily being a SaaS business, it might be a different model, it might be a service, it might be something else. So you're saying be stuck on the audience that you want to serve and look at the problems that they have, and then be a little bit more flexible about what the solutions to those problems look like.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that the problem, especially with a lot of like early SaaS founders, MicroSaaS founders, is like we get pigeonholed into, hey, my product does this. How do I find customers for that? As opposed to, hey, the market needs this. And it doesn't have to be a big market. It can be such a small market. That's your huge advantage as an indie SaaS founder, is that you can serve an incredibly tiny market that no one else cares about because venture capitalists ignore it because it's too small for them. Other founders haven't discovered it, but you can find it and serve it. I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Rand, one final question just before you go, because we are just about out of time. You wrote a book a few years ago. It's a really good book. Have you got a copy in the background? Can you dig it out and talk about it? Is there so Lost and Founder? Talk us through that for anyone who hasn't read it yet.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, probably some people who know my background and history know that I had a fairly traumatic and adventurous last few years at Moz. And as I was leaving the company, I wanted to help other founders with, I think, one of the most painful parts of being a founder and a CEO is feeling alone. Like, is anybody else experiencing this? And if they've experienced it, what was that like? And do other people have fights with their best friends? And like, do they lose, touch with family members over things that happen in a business? And do they feel these terrible things when they have to do layoffs? And what do they do when their product has to serve a huge audience because they raised venture capital, but their core audience is drifting away to competitors because they're trying to take it too big? And I wanted to write a book that was essentially the equivalent of, we sit down at a diner and have a super emotional conversation where a few tears flow and we have like the big hug at the end. That's what Lost and Founder is. It is very transparent and deeply vulnerable. And it does not paint a great picture of me or the company that I started necessarily, or the investors who gave us money. It is a raw, unvarnished look at building a company. And there's lots of advice in there too, that I think come from lessons sort of hard won, but it's not it's not a traditional business book. Traditional business book, like you can go to Wikipedia, read the summary, and you know what the book, you're like, oh, okay, this book is about using emotions to sell to people on your landing page. Great. Like I have a bunch of tactics for that. That's cool. Lost and Founder is not that at all. It's very narrative and a little tear jerky, not in a traditional emotional sense, but like in a just lots of crazy stuff happened, and I think that is the universal experience for founders.
One of the things I really respect about that, though, is that so much of the startup world is just super broy. Everyone's crushing it all the time. It's this very sanitized, yep, we're winning all the time. Nothing bad ever happens. The reality, once you've been in this world for a while, is that as a founder, you go through ups and downs, and so much shit is outside your control, and you have to do things that you really don't want to do. And I've never met like a founder who enjoyed having to let people go. Like that's heart-wrenching. They got a mortgage to pay, they got kids to feed, they got rent to pay. Nobody wants to be in that position, but unfortunately, as founders, you end up having to do a lot of things that are pretty tough and pretty emotionally draining. And so what I really respect about that is the fact that you're giving them warts and all version of what it's like to be a startup founder, as opposed to.
I mean, one of the big problems that I see in our field and many others is that there's no incentive. There's no incentive to really tell the truth. It doesn't help you raise money next time. It doesn't help you get customers. It doesn't help you sort of build a positive reputation. Crushing it all the time makes you look big and fancy and important to people who also expect to be crushing it all the time. And like, there's that, whatever you want to call it, the old boys network of tech is used to that kind of thing. They're not used to people being like, well, let me tell you about my anxiety and neuroses and depression. And let me tell you about stepping down as a CEO. And let me tell you about how terrible it is to fire people and what we were doing while the company was not growing. Like, no, don't talk about it. Don't even share that stuff. You're not supposed to share that stuff because it will not help you or your career. And as a result, you get very few stories of that, even though every time, just like you, Ryan, every time I've sat down at that diner for that coffee, every other founder is like, oh yeah, well, what I didn't tell you, after I said I was crushing it on stage, is that this is going on and that's going on and whatever. My relationships are falling apart. My team is falling apart. Yeah.
It's not. It's not what you read about in TechCrunch. The reality is always vastly different. But
you are not alone. That's the thing that I'm trying to convey here, right? And it is so powerful to feel like you have a community of people who recognize what you're going through and share your specific pains and frustrations and journey, and they'll get it. And I think that's why like those tears come out and those hugs come out in those conversations, because feeling like you can open up to someone and talk about it is a superpower. And that's, that was the goal with Lost and Founder. Like, let me make that conversation available to a lot of people. Because it's not right to keep it in the closet and only let it out sometimes. A lot of people, unfortunately, can't bring it up with even the people closest to them in life. Their romantic partner or their family or their best friend or their co-founder. They feel like they can't talk about it, and that sucks.
The thing I respect about you, Rand, is the fact that there is another pathway. You don't have to be the broy douchebag who raises a ton of money in Silicon Valley. You can build a very successful business and not lose your humanity and have customers who love you, have a great, successful, very profitable business, because you've done that once, twice, and you're about to do it a third time. So, Rand Fishkin, I'm going to put links to all your stuff, SparkToro, your book Lost and Founder, Snackbar as well, if anyone's interested in trying that game out as well. Let me know when you're about to launch it. Rand, if anyone is interested in getting in touch or they want to find out about more of your stuff, where's the best place for them to go?
I am most active these days on Blue Sky, where I'm Randfish, and on LinkedIn, where I'm Rand Fishkin. And of course, if you want to subscribe to SparkToro's blog, that's where I do most of my writing these days, even about Snackbar Studio stuff. If the alternative fundraising, which I know we didn't get into the specifics of that, but if alternative fundraising appeals to you, I have open sourced the documents for a C Corp, that fundraised Snackbar Studio and an LLC, SparkToro. You can find those documents and recommendations for lawyers and all that kind of stuff on SparkToro. If you just look up SparkToro funding or Snackbar funding, we love helping people with that.
I can put a link in the description as well, because I think that would be really useful to a lot of people. And the way you did it.
Yeah, just thinking about how you fund your business differently, right? Because SparkToro was able to, and Snackbar, like raise money and then pay our investors back, and not have to be 10x, 50x, in order to be successful.
Fantastic. Rand, thank you so much for your time today, buddy. This was great.